The Oklahoma Sooners picked up another big-time defender in the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase over at Game Time. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. The Oklahoma Sooners added Kendall Daniels, the linebacker safety hybrid defender from Oklahoma State in the transfer portal. He was formerly the number one overall player in the state of Oklahoma in the 2021 recruiting cycle, was a top 50 prospect, and had 4 pretty strong seasons with Oklahoma State, including the last 3. And was a all Big 12 defensive freshman of the year. He was a freshman All-American. So this is a player with a lot of promise and adds a little bit of experience to the safety / linebacker room, wherever you want to put him, adds a little experience to the defense.
Yeah, he's very versatile. And that's the one thing that you like about his ability. And honestly, if there's one player that it has the potential and encompasses all of the Isaiah Simmons features of the cheetah that we saw at Clemson, that Brent Venables has been looking for since he got back to Oklahoma, Kendall Daniels is probably that dude. 6'4", 240 pounds. That's roughly about what Isaiah Simmons was built at. And as you mentioned, Kendall Daniels has a lot of experience on the field, over 240. He has about 240 career tackles, 7.5 sacks. So he has the numbers. It's been an up and down career there at Oklahoma State, but overall mainly good because he's been producing and putting up numbers. As soon as I posted about it, an Oklahoma State fan jumped in there and was like, well, this is what you're going to get. And he's trying to show all the bad whiffs that we've seen Daniels have before. But I've also seen him do some really good stuff. And so I think the effort piece, bringing him here, you can fix that because that's actually in Kendall Daniels' draft grade. So that's one of the weaknesses is you got to get better angles, got to put a little bit more effort in. I think Oklahoma can push that out of him.
Well, and if not, then he ain't going to play.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of the simplistic view of it is, okay, if you're coming here with this reputation that maybe you don't put forth the best effort. Now, you don't hear people talking about his 2023 tape or his 2022 tape like that.
Nope.
I wonder what happened in 2024 that maybe made a player not give as much effort. Maybe because Oklahoma State was terrible.
Possibly. I mean, we can't truly believe that it's because they sucked.
Now, you should be able to give a good effort regardless of your circumstances around you. At the same time, if there's a coaching staff that's going to be able to get the best out of a defensive player, I trust Oklahoma's coaching staff to be able to do that. I don't even know who the linebackers coach is yet. I don't even know who they are going to tab as the defensive play caller yet. But I just trust Brent Venables to be like, hey, if you're going to give the same kind of effort here, you're not going to play. Now, if you're going to raise your game, if you're going to raise your effort level, if you're going to improve your tenacity, if you're going to improve your angles, then you're going to get on the field and you're going to be a dynamic player for us. Yep. But it's going to be up to you. It's the same challenge that I'm sure he gave to Danny Stutzman when he first arrived. How great you want to be is going to be dependent upon how much effort you put in, both on and off the field. The tools are all there for Kendall Daniels to be an impact player, whether he's the cheetah, whether he's a stand-up outside linebacker playing off the edge, whether he's a safety, however they want to deploy him, he's got the tools to be impactful. But it's just going to be up to him to go out there and make the most of what he's got in the tool bag.
Yeah. Yeah, and John, he actually adds to a depth that we kind of need. We got Kendall Dobie saying that he's coming back. It's exciting. But we don't know when he's going to come back. I mean, he did have a pretty gruesome ankle injury right at the beginning of conference play. So when you have an injury like that, hopefully he didn't have ligament tear, but if he did, I don't expect to see him back again until probably Kent State right before Texas. It's going to be a full year of recovery from an ankle injury that includes torn ligaments. It's similar to tearing your ACL. You're typically going to be on a 12-month cycle. So but adding a player like Kendall Daniels gets you at additional depth to go behind a Reggie Powers III and allows for a Samuel Masigo to play more on the inside, which honestly I think he's a lot better on the linebacker spot in comparison to playing out there at Cheetah. But having a dude that's versatile that you can just move around. I mean, you can throw him out there at linebacker. You can run a 3-4 defense, have him as one of the linebackers to go along with a Cheetah if you really want to. And he's going to be overly disruptive. And he's a dude that you recognize on the field. Again, Brent Venables trying to find that Isaiah Simmons guy once again, because that was the one thing that was always fascinating by Isaiah. You would see him in the randomest spots on defense. You'd be like, who is this ginormous human being out here moving around? Like you have to identify him before you actually run your play, because he's going to disrupt it. He's going to knock down a pass because it's kind of hard to throw over a dude that's 6'4", that's got hops. Plus he's a bigger guy. So it makes the defense have to have questions about what they're going to do. And I think Kendall Daniels can help with that, because even though we have some nice size at linebacker, nice size at safety, Brandon Hall's done well there. Brent Venables has done very well at the linebacker spot. You don't have a dude that sits. I mean, McCullough was the closest thing you had to what we were seeing out of Kendall Daniels, and McCullough was a little bit slighter. You could tell he had a slighter build. He was more of an edge, it felt like. Daniels is huge. And so, yeah, like you said, I think that this staff can get the most out of him.
Where do you think he's going to kind of fit into the defensive hierarchy when he first gets on campus? Is he going to be somebody that's going to have to fall behind a Reggie Powers at Cheetah and then have to work his way up? Do you think he's somebody that you could slot in right now as a starter at Cheetah? Or are we looking at like, hey, Samuel Masigo, Kobe McKenzie, Kip Lewis, that's kind of our starting 3 linebackers, and then we'll figure out where Kendall Dolby lands?
To be honest, and that was the one question I had when I thought about it. So, okay, Brent Venables wants to get this guy, again, mentioning the Isaiah Simmons comp. Where do you really put him initially? And it doesn't feel like he actually has a home. And that's not a bad thing. Like I said, Simmons was known for being moved around. So to me, I think you start him off in the linebacker room, mainly because you have to understand the versatility you have to play when it comes to being at the Cheetah role. Not only having coverage capabilities, you got to have the abilities to rush the passer and be able to stop the run. And I think Kendall Daniels will have that, but it's going to take some time to really learn the ins and outs of the role. So even though linebacker is the toughest role to play for Brent Venables, honestly, I could see him up a little bit back there in the safety room. A little bit, probably more there with Peyton Bowen at the strong spot, or even with Robert Spears Jennings a little bit, because I think Robert Spears Jennings more so is your free safety, but you could probably put him there to initially start while he's learning all 3 roles, because it's 3 different positions you're playing at Cheetah. That makes the most sense to me to start. But I think by the time the season begins, it'll be him and Reggie Powers rotating at Cheetah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a box player to me. I don't think that they're going to have him be your single high safety. He played primarily in the box for Oklahoma State. And listen, he was an impactful player playing in that role. He had 105 tackles in 2023, 6 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions. Last year, he had 64 total tackles, 11 tackles for loss, and 5.5 sacks. I mean, he can contribute in a lot of different ways. So it is going to be fascinating to see ultimately where he lands on the depth chart and who Oklahoma thinks he can be for their defense. And I think he's going to be an impactful player. Another impactful player is coming back. Let's discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Attending the new 12-team college football playoff games is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. I remember the excitement of past playoff games and can't wait to make new memories with the updated format and extra teams involved. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I used Game Time Picks to find tickets for an upcoming game. Browsing through the deals was a breeze, and I found great value for all kinds of seats around the venue. The Super Deal in particular stood out as the best value for the event. I love that I could see the seat views before buying and that the app shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. plus the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee gave me complete peace of mind. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed over at Game Time. Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. R. Mason Thomas is coming back, Jay.
Look, I've talked about this week on and week off, and I told y'all my expectation was he was going to return. And shout out to me. I was right on the Grease reference. Tried to tell y'all that was back to school again. That what that whole reference was. But I love the fact that they had some fun with it. They all probably knew the one Oklahoma post that came out on accident to kind of say he was coming back. They'd already come to an agreement. But he probably did. I think R. Mason Thomas possibly did look at draft grades and wanted to see where he potentially was going to be. The 15th is really the date when he needed to make a decision fully, but he's coming back. And that's a huge thing for Oklahoma. The Marvin Jones Jr. pickup to go along with him, get you back to having two experienced edges out there while you get Danny Okoye and PJ Adebaware as well as Taylor Wine and Wyatt Gilmore. You get them all up and running. This is a huge pickup. Like, I don't think people understand that, and this is something we have to talk about here in the near future, really break down, John, is roster retention is a part of your roster management that comes with transfer portal acquisition. Like, you've got to, you're working on retaining your own guys because schools be tampering the heck out of players when they're really good because they know that you can't pay everybody. Right. Somebody's going to have to get left out on the pay scale. So they're going to come after one of them and be like, hey, they ain't paying you. You can come over here and play with us. We'll pay you over everybody else.
Well, and that's part of the trying to run this thing like an NFL front office that you're starting to see also is prioritizing your guys in quote unquote free agency and drafting. So recruiting and developing and then prioritizing your own players when it comes to name, image, and likeness. This is what you see successful teams doing at the NFL level. They draft really, really well, and they retain their guys that are really, really good players. And so retaining R. Mason Thomas, one, not letting him go somewhere else in the transfer portal, not even letting him get to the NFL because you value his production and his presence at the collegiate level. Whatever the one Oklahoma deal was enough to keep him from potentially being a top 50 pick in this year's draft. Now, there's going to be ways he can continue to work on his game. That's the developmental piece, but that's part of what Oklahoma's doing. We know that they've had to retain a lot of guys, and they've done so on the defensive side of the ball. I get questions on social media. Well, what about offense? Well, what about offense? What about offense? Offense, they got a lot of pieces. Okay. And you're trusting your offensive coordinator to make the ingredients work. And you can't have a good team unless this defense is retained. And this defense is going to be good, again, because you brought back Dominic Williams. You brought back R. Mason Thomas. You brought back Robert Spears-Jennings and Kip Lewis, Jaden Jackson. You brought all these guys back, Grayson Halton. And you're going to be good again. The cornerback room is going to continue to develop. And so I get why people don't want to get too excited about guys staying or get excited about a defensive addition on the transfer portal. Well, what was the only bright spot of the team this year? It was on the defensive side of the ball. Now you've overhauled your offense, and you're hoping they can match what your defense did.
And that's what's most important is that we hired a coach whose identity is defense. So, of course, he's going to prioritize the side of the ball that you hired him for. Now, granted, I totally understand the questions when it comes to what about the offensive coordinator? What about offense? What offensive players? Why aren't we getting more skills guys? Totally get that. Our goal on the offensive side of the ball had two problems. Number one was play calling, and number two was quarterback play because of said play calling. And then, of course, the last thing is we dealt with the slew of just ginormous injuries. Well, we've added some quote unquote depth when it comes to the offensive line to make sure that we had some veterans to go along with the young players that had a year of being thrown in the fire and kind of growing from. So I'm not concerned about offensive line. I think my questions now are answered. I think from Logan Howland to both the Jakes and Isaiah Autry-Dent, I think we're good at tackle, even when you bring in the new guys. McClinko may see some run. Simmons may see some run, but you've got the young dudes that are ready to go ahead and play. Your guards, to me, you're set. You've got dudes that we've seen them be able to push people around and make things happen. Troy Everett being at the center spot and then bringing in, with Isosa and then Owen Hollenbeck right behind him. I think we're fine on line. Wide receiver room, you had a lot of young dudes, so you brought in guys that actually put up production last season. All we need to see now is if our quarterback play is going to be there. And I think that either Michael Hawkins or John Mateer can do a really good job in Ben Arbuckle's system because it's built to help a quarterback make life easier for them, John. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing I don't think people are getting when we say, I think the offense would be all right. Because if truth be told, if we just had a top 40 defense, we would have won 3 more games. Because that's all we needed. The Missouri game, if we had offense, we win. Tennessee game, we had offense, we win. I mean, it's more so you're giving the ball back instantaneously. If you're not giving the ball back the minute you get the ball, you win the game. That's it. Ole Miss, I mean, if we didn't have another injury on the offensive line in the second half, we were up at halftime. So my point is, as long as we have a competent offense, I'm not stressing about it. I just want it to be competent. This defense can do it. But the last thing, I don't want to be too long-winded though, John, but I want to point this out. You had a top 10 defense and efficiency in most metrics last season. If you're not continuously getting better there, other teams are going to be ready for it. Mm-hmm. So adding additional names that people have to try to figure out, a Marvin Jones Jr., now that you've lost Ethan Downs, Caden Willard, as well as Trace Ford. Marvin Jones Jr. coming in there at the edge with R. Mason returning. Your corners, you need to add an additional component now that Kanai's not there. But if Gentry Williams comes back at least half-fold, you're solid. You don't have Billy Bowman out there no more. But Peyton Bowen's shown us that he has the capabilities, and Robert Spears-Jennings is back. So Kendall Daniels mixing in there with all of that. You don't have Stutzman, but you still got to be able to have pieces that can come in and play immediately. And I think that that's why you're seeing them making sure the defense is tooled, and then they'll focus on the offense as they need to.
Looking ahead to week 1 of the 2025 season, who do you think are going to be the starting edges opposite of our Mason Thomas will start at 1. Who's going to be the other starting edge?
Honestly, I think it's going to be Marvin Jones. I think Marvin Jones has the ability to be that starter to begin with, but I expect a heavy 4-man rotation with Marvin Jones, R. Mason, Danny Okoye, PJ Adebaware. That feels like your 4-man rotation the first 3 games of the season, including Michigan. I think Michigan game, that's the one where you really see both of them because you're going to do a lot of one-on-one stuff against the tackle, and you're playing against a team that we haven't seen really do well in the forward pass, and a team that wants to bully you. That's Michigan's game. Shout out to Sharon Moore. That's how you win against certain teams that are really good and very finesse. Yeah, you just beat them up. And we kind of did that. That was a great example of us against Alabama. We just beat them up. And that's what you want to be able to do. If you can bully teams, honestly, to me, that was the success you saw out of Georgia and Alabama in the main years, right? LSU was different because they were just offensively, they were ridiculous. Like, you can't do anything about that. The defense was solid, but the offense was just absurd. Like, the defense didn't have to do much because the offense was that good. So, but playing bully ball, muddying up the waters, we saw most of the top 15 defenses in college football were all SEC teams. I think it was probably 7 or 8 out of the top 15 were SEC teams. Notre Dame was up there too. And we saw what they did to Georgia. They bullied you. Mm. You want to be able to play that bully ball. And I think that adding more strength on the defensive side of the ball is critical to be able to continue to do that.
Will Oklahoma have a top 7 or top front 7 in the SEC next year? We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets if you win or lose. You ain't got to even you ain't got to win it no more. You can win or lose it. And the FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same game parlays, and so much more. So like right now in the NFL action, we're starting the playoffs, guys. You've got some games coming up this weekend as the playoffs for college football is going to be coming through Thursday, Friday, and then it's NFL playoffs right afterwards. You've got some teams to go check out. Like I'm looking at my Buccaneers, -3 against the Washington Commanders. I'm hoping these Buccaneers can pull it off. Get me another win, Baker. I need it. So if you want to get into the action, just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make these playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts for free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. Hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. The importance of bringing back R. Mason Thomas, I don't think can be understated, because if you don't bring him back, you're looking at being very, very young and potentially inexperienced. Even though you bring in a guy like Marvin Jones Jr., he's got kind of one season of okay production.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're looking to be really, really young. And as we get into this discussion of can Oklahoma have one of the best or the best front seven in the SEC, I don't think we can understate the loss of Ethan Downs, a guy who was very experienced and very consistent. Sure, you don't have 9 sacks out of Ethan Downs, but you had 5.5, 5.5, 3.5 in the last 3 seasons.
Yep.
And he was one of your better run defenders during his time at Oklahoma. So as they look to replace him and figure out who's going to be that other defensive end opposite of R. Mason Thomas, that's going to be an important piece to remember, is they're going to look for somebody that can consistently set the edge and play the run. So Jay, let's look at this though, because Oklahoma had a really, really good front seven last year, but they lost Danny Stutzman. You lose Dejon Terry, you lose Ethan Downs, Trace Ford, Caden Woolard. Some big pieces out of your front seven. We like who they got. We like who they got.
No, go ahead.
But what do you think they've got to do? Who's got to step up for them to have the top front seven in the SEC?
Yeah, looking at that, I've been looking at the roster and trying to figure out, okay, what's the configuration going to look like? Now, of course, granted, this is us, theory crafting here, which is always fun, but Dominic Williams coming back is huge. That takes care of one spot that made you a little bit concerned. You'll have him as well as Jaden Jackson, your freshman All-American, which we expected him to be right back, get him taken care of, as everybody was trying to get their hands on him. But I think that interior piece, I think you're good. You're probably going to need at least one more body. Trent Wilson comes in as your only 2025 guy, even though you were going after 3. You're probably going to need one more guy that's going to have at least 4 years of eligibility just to make sure that you shore that up. Now, granted, I do expect in 2026 for the Sooners to be very busy in the recruiting trail, trying to get some, really good defensive tackles to come in to add to the room just so you had depth. But when you look back at the 23 and the 24 classes, you really did pick up a lot of interior and front seven guys with Daniel Koye. We've talked about him and PJ Adebaware, Wyatt Gilmore, Taylor Wine. That's 4 names right there to keep in mind as playing a combination of edge and interior. And then Nigel Smith right there that's going to be playing a little bit more inside, it sounds like, in comparison to edge. So I think from there, you're going to be good as far as depth goes, and you may actually have some competitive depth that you can rotate through. Linebacker is where I've always been wondering about, because Kip and Kobe probably have maybe a year, maybe 2 left for both of them. Bringing in Kendall Daniels gets you another big linebacker that can play now. Like, I hated losing to Sam McCullough. He was the one dude that I was really excited about, especially because his size. It makes it difficult to throw passes, especially when you get to talk about the quarterbacks we're going to be dealing with here in the SEC. They're gonna find a way to get the ball around him. He's a giant. You got to know where he's at and say, I can't throw that direction. He's going to back the ball down. So for Oklahoma, the key thing is going to be, what does it look like from that cheetah role? Who do you want to rotate? Because I still feel like Samuel Mosigo is probably better suited playing your linebacker, or he could be your quote-unquote bigger cheetah. I don't see him as the coverage guy. I see Powers being your coverage cheetah, while Dobie gets more healthy, unless you decide to slide Dobie over there at the corner spot. I'm really excited about this interior, about this front seven, John. I have the question, though. Who's going to really pull the Dejon Terry role?
I mean, that's, Dominic Williams, Jaden Jackson. I mean, those two guys are going to be your primary nose tackles.
Yeah.
I would like to see them add another nose tackle that allows Jaden Jackson to play some more 3 technique. But to me, your defensive tackle rotation is Dominic Williams, Jaden Jackson, and then at the 3 technique, you're looking at Grayson Halton and David Stone. Like, those are the guys that I'm expecting to play a lot and get a lot of your defensive tackle snaps. And if that's your 4-man rotation, you're looking really good. And then on the edge, again, we have a little bit of question on one side, but R. Mason Thomas is going to be dynamic once again. Now, teams are going to try to throw more double teams and triple teams at him to prevent him from just wrecking shop. But that just creates opportunity for everybody else along the defensive front. And it's going to be up to the defensive coordinator and Miguel Chavis to put R. Mason Thomas in positions where he's going to be able to succeed. And we saw that. They moved him around. They put him on both sides of the defensive line and allowed him to attack an offensive line's weakness. And sometimes go up against one of their best, offensive tackles, and he was having success. So I think the defensive front is fine. I think it's going to be really, really good. You need to see PJ Adebawore step up. You need to see Danny Okoye step up and begin to earn some significant run on the defense. But I really, really like the defensive end rotation. I really, really love, I love the defensive tackle rotation. Like, it's the best it's been in a really, really long time. And we're just scratching the surface with Jaden Jackson and David Stone. And I think Grayson Halton, I think that dude, he had a big year. It's kind of flown under the radar because of how good everybody else was around him, right? How good R. Mason Thomas was, obviously how good Danny Stutzman was, the breakout from Jaden Jackson, the just consistent, solid play of guys like Dominic Williams and Ethan Downs. Grayson Halton had 5 sacks this year. That's really good for a defensive tackle, and 30 total tackles. Like, that's really good. The guy that, just like R. Mason Thomas, we'd expected him to have this breakout year maybe in 2023, but he was still just figuring some stuff out. And then it came in 2024. So all these guys that are 2nd and 3rd year guys, especially those guys that are 3rd year guys, I'm expecting like a PJ Adebawore. I'm expecting him. Now, at this point, you're at the point in your career where you've got to be playing significant snaps for this defense. You've got to be ready to go in 2025. We need to see your athleticism, your length out there on the field, creating problems for opposing offensive lines. Now's the time for you. If it's ever going to come together, now's the time. Now, I know you got multiple years left of eligibility, but still, your team needs you now to step up and be a big-time playmaker for them.
Yeah, that's the one player that we know that is slated to have the biggest year is PJ, him. And I think Danny Okoye is going to really have his breakout year. He's a true freshman last year, and I totally understand. He may have a little frustration that he wants to get out there on the field, but you're a true freshman. You got to know, not only know the plays and know what you're supposed to do, but it takes time to get you going. And we saw that out of Dylan Stewart. I think Dylan Stewart's just a different animal out there at edge. But I think Danny can be that exact same thing, especially with his strength and his ability. We just got to see him get some bend in there and get around those edges and cause issues. This is the year where Danny's going to get a lot of opportunity. So him and PJ are the ones that really are going to determine if this can be a top front 7 in the SEC. If those two show out right behind Marvin Jones Jr. and R. Mason Thomas, we're going to have that because we already know Jaden Jackson's already rated up there. Dominic told us before the season started this dude's going to be an All-American. He didn't just say freshman. He said All-American, John. So when he said that, I was like, oh. You got some. No, that's some big praise. Let's see if this happens. And sure enough, this dude becomes a freshman All-American. So, Jaden Jackson's going to be that. Dominic's going to show up because he's shown out. He showed up this season. Grayson Halton, as you mentioned, with 5.5 sacks this season, which is pretty darn good for an interior guy. And you still got 5-star David Stone that we know has the talent. He's just got to get his weight up and get to pushing people around. So that spot, I feel like Stone's going to be your guy that's probably going to have the breakout season because Grayson had his last year. But if those edges show up, they're definitely going to be it. And Kip and Kobe, we know, are really good. Adding Kendall Daniels with Samuel Masigo, oh gosh. The Sooners will have the argument for the best front 7 in the SEC. Absolutely no problem. And I cannot wait to read Phil Steele's rankings for this team because he was spot on. We had one of the best linebacker rooms in the SEC. He gave us as one of the better secondaries, but we dealt with all those injuries. We didn't get Gentry back, so we didn't get to see that come to fruition like we would like. But Eli Bowen did come out of nowhere, so there's a good chance that he's going to be like, hey, if Gentry is healthy with Eli as a freshman All-American, Sooners could have the best secondary too.
Man, I hope it can't get here fast enough, man. I'm ready to see this defense take on all comers, because I think they're going to be really good again. Now it's just a matter of, can the offense pull its weight? I think everybody's at this point. The defense is going to be really good. Can the offense pull its weight? And we think it's going to be able to. And again, it doesn't even have to be Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray level of offense. It just has to be good,
competent,
just good.
Just show up.
Just
get first downs.
Just get some first downs. Just
convert on third. That's all we ask for.
27 points per game. That's all I'm asking for. 27 points per game, and Oklahoma's going to be a 9-win team. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Check out his channel over on YouTube, Unfair Sports. Follow me at John9Williams. And then the show is at Locked On Sooners on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever you like to do for social media. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. Boomer.
Sooner.